Thank you so much, and thank you, Minister, for this truly inspiring speech. And I hope that now we'll talk about more bread and butter part of how to achieve the goals that you described. So let me ask you to come back to us, to join us also in this opening panel. But I would like to ask also to join us here, Chiara Martinelli, Director at Can Europe. And please welcome our guests with rounds of applause. Let me welcome here also Bartek Czyczerski, the CEO at Business and Science Poland. And last but not least, Niels Malskær, Senior Energy Advisor at the Danish Embassy in Poland. Welcome. So, just yesterday, EU environment ministers discussed the clean industrial deal. So, as we see, the political will is there, but as we also know, political will is not enough. So still, the fundamental questions abound, among others, the financing and the implementation. So in this opening panel, we ask how can Europe lead in decarbonization without compromising its competitiveness, and how to turn these ambitions, also mentioned by the minister, into reality for Poland, for Europe, and for our future. So, without further ado, let me turn to Urszula Zielińska, back to Urszula Zielińska. You have had your warm-up, but I'm really sorry in advance. Now a very difficult question and a very compound one. You are very vocal about the importance of harmonizing Poland's climate goals with key EU initiatives like, for example, Clean Industrial Deal. I would like to ask you, what are discrepancies here between the two? And then how the Polish presidency is planning to bridge these discrepancies, to bridge these gaps between the Polish approach and the European Union approach, and what concrete tools and partnerships can help us in bridging these gaps?
Thank you, and please bear with me, you still have me again. But I'll be brief and I will be very concrete because I know it's easy to talk about lofty, big, ambitious goals, right? But how do we deliver them and where's the money? So to answer your question first, to bridge the gap, Poland needs to accelerate the energy transition. And Poland currently has all the tools to do so, including the financing. It has actually the financing it never had before, precisely for that purpose. And I want to give you some numbers. Currently, our status quo, maintaining where we are today in the energy system, costs us, that's not all the cost, I'm just going to give you a few examples. We invest every year, or spend every year, 100 billion zloty, that's about 140 billion zloty, that's about 30 billion euro, correct? Yeah, slightly more. For importing fossil fuels, oil, gas, and coal from abroad, usually from outside of Europe. Then we pay about, lightly speaking, about 100 billion zloty, that's about 25 billion euro, so-called external costs of health, because of our air is very polluted. It's one of the most polluted air in lowest quality in Europe, and that's a big challenge. And then we pay, currently we know long-term data is telling us that it costs us at least 6 billion zloty, and recently it's even doubled into 12 billion zloty a year to pay for the infrastructure cost for losses caused by drought, flooding, and fires alone. Just these three alone. That's the Institute of environment providing these reports. In recent years, the cost has doubled, so it's now 12 billion zloty for these three events alone: fires, droughts, and flooding. And we had a huge flooding last year, autumn, just to show exactly how it looks when it really when it happens. And then, obviously, the cost of CO2. Everyone in heavy industry is complaining about this, would want to get rid of the ETS, is paying heavy, I think it's about 25 billion zloty a year that it's paid of the cost of emissions, because I think it's still fair to request polluters to pay. But then the businesses would want to get rid of this cost, and rightly so, because as a business they want to keep the cost down, and they can. And they can through climate action, they can through green technologies. So, so we pay, if I just add those four cost items that I've just mentioned, and that's not all, it costs us about 270 billion zloty a year to run the current energy system as we have it. Now, the investment required to go climate neutral by 2050 and to cut our emissions by slightly more than 50% to get close to the European target of 55, the cost of that for us will be 156 billion zloty a year, roughly on average, between now and 2030. So the cost of slow action or inaction is, to mention just few issues, about 300 billion. The cost of investment to get more resilient, cheaper, better energy sources, cleaner air, is about 150 billion. So it's half of the cost we're paying today to maintain our energy system. And now where the money can come from, it's already there. We have about 540 billion zloty in a current financial perspective between now and 2030 to invest into energy transition. That's all the energy transition and European programs added together that we currently have in Poland to our disposal. And the total cost of investment we foresee, we have analyzed as part of the National Energy and Climate Plan that will be required in that period of time, is about 700 billion 90. Sorry for so many numbers. I know your eyes are getting blurry because of them. So what I want to say, we have more than a half of the investment that's required to run an ambitious energy transition and get rid of the cost of ETS, get rid of the cost of imports of fossil fuels and dependency from elsewhere, clean our air and get rid of the cost of the health system that our polluted air is currently giving us. We have almost more than half of this money we have already just alone in form of European funding. The rest will be private investment, and a couple of days ago, just 3 main energy companies in Poland have told us in another panel that they already prepared 300 billion investment out of this. So if you look at these numbers, really the investment is there. 3 biggest energy companies said, we prepared in our strategy between now and 2030, 300 billion investment. Then we have 500 billion investment in European funds, and we need about 800. The rest of the market will bring this to the table because it really gives them competitive edge. And the data is telling us if we invest this, we'll have greater economic growth, more than 4% year on year. We're growing less than that currently, and we have lower cost, and our energy bills will drop down. We'll lower our energy prices to double digit, even about 20% by 2030 and even more by 2040. So really the economic bill is there. The business case for this is there, and it's quite strong. So having set the ambition, I we're already planning and projecting real tools and also economic evaluation that is showing us that it really will pay off.
Thank you. That sounds really optimistic and promising. And do you think that it will help to meet EU-wide decarbonization goals?
Yes.
Is there enough of political will in Poland to implement all this money into real decarbonization?
I definitely see enough political will to lower energy bills. It's there. Everyone is talking about this. I definitely see enough political will from right front and center of the political scene to grow our GDP more. And it's there in the energy transition plan. So the rest is for the political scene to figure out. You know, they can take it or they can leave it, and we can grow slower and pay all these bills. I trust in people's really. At the end of the day, I trust in people's judgment and right decisions when they have all the data in front of them. So I'm there to provide the data. The decision will be taken in terms of national energy and climate plan very, very soon, and I hope it will be a good one.
Thank you so much. So now off to Chiara. How, in your view, can civil society help ensure that the Clean Industrial Deal addresses both environmental but also social dimensions effectively?
Good morning, and thank you for the question, and thank you for the invitation. So to answer to your question, I think it's very much building on what has been just said. The main message that we want to give here, I guess, is that when it comes to the political context that we have, when it comes to the goals that we have at the European level, I mean, the accent should be on the social and economic benefits of the transition. And we heard a lot of numbers, so thank you. No, that's good. Thank you for that, because actually there is, I guess we all agree that in this political context in Europe and globally, we do need to put the finger on clear and true numbers, evidence, and facts. So that is very important. The first, when it comes to the question, is really like what is our role as civil society to make sure that this Clean Industrial Deal is really a tool, I would say, to advance the achievement of our European goals when it comes to social and environmental progress, I will call it. I think the first message I want to give is that we do see the Clean Industrial Deal as a confirmation and an acknowledgement that competitiveness and climate action and decarbonization needs to go hand in hand. I think that has been welcomed also by civil society as a signal of saying we need to continue the path forward. Of course, we are civil society. We also see that there are some loopholes in there, and that there are some unclarities there, and there are some gaps that we would like to push to make sure that really this deal can deliver. So the first one is more like, I would say, general and political. I think we need to keep repeating and making it clear that this Clean Industrial Deal is a deal that needs to be seen as a step further, as a complementary to a broader vision that has been mentioned also by Antoine at the beginning, like that is the vision of addressing the triple crisis that we are facing, and not only one part of the whole challenge that we have. And then I think more concretely, because we have been invited to be concrete, I think there are three main things that as Can Europe we try to push when it comes to industrial policies that really could serve this transition forward. The first one, we call for an industrial transformation that is people-centered. And within that, it means a strategy for industry in Europe that we call it is place-based, meaning like that is looking really at the territory, is looking at the supply chain, the industrial value chain across the continent, so that we avoid embarking in a two-track approach across the continent, but that really it's about industrial policies that bring towards a European cohesion rather than in the other way around. The second point is really measures to support workers during the transition. Through the transition, I think Poland also had brought many contributions and many lessons learned, like in this regard, also at the European level. And here I want to make a very concrete proposal. I mean, there is now in the air the idea of a just transition directive. I think that tools like these ones at the European level, when it comes to European legislation, are very helpful to make sure that industrial policies also put an accent on mandatory reskilling, for instance. They put an accent on incentives also to companies for upskilling current employees, but also to make more transition plans within industry, so that could allow basically preparing the ground also socially to the transition that needs to happen. And then last but not least is really we are putting a strong accent when it comes to the Green Industrial Deal to the needed social and environmental conditionalities that needs to go very strictly together public funding. And here I think, I mean, again, like to go back to where we started here, it's all about money and where the money should stop going and where the money should go. So I think we looked with interest to this Green Industrial Deal. At the same time, I would say the measures that give direction and give like tools for implementation when it comes to public funding to the implementation of this deal are, according to me, very vague and still not very practical in which sense are we going to move. So I think this is a very important tool that we understood there is also the political will to look into in the context of the development of the next EU budget. Again, like our message as Can Europe is that we can't wait too long. I think these measures needs to be very clear and needs to be going hand in hand, like across the different crises that we are facing. So I want to make very specifically, we hear a lot industries calling for public support to deliver on this Green Industrial Deal. We hear that, but this public support needs to be with very strict social and environmental conditionalities, and needs to not be a transfer of money from the energy transition to the industrial strategy.
While listening to the important words that you are mentioning, I return in my mind to the opinion poll that has been conducted just recently, and it showed that over 70% of the Polish people are rather fearful, not hopeful, concerning the European climate ambitions. So there is some discrepancy between these results and what you are saying about the public will in order to decarbonize for the European economy, and how to really sell the clean industrial policies of the European Union to the European citizens, in your view, not the ones that you are mentioning that already have this will.
No, I think this is a very important point. So first of all, I'm not Polish, so I'm not going to speak for Polish citizens.
I'm sure this opinion is not limited to our country.
Yeah, I know, and I agree. Indeed, that was my first point. This is something we see across the European Union. I mean, I also had recently in an event somebody complaining about somebody from the European Commission complaining that we don't, that going around Europe and feeling like nobody knows about the European Green Deal. It's obvious, nobody cares about something that is abstract and very close to people. So I think this is also our work as civil society to make it very concrete and accessible to people. When it comes to the discussion we are having, I think there are already many experiences across the European member states, including in Poland, for instance, on putting the accent of actually what is very close to people. And the key point here is the cost of living, the energy prices. So that's why what I said about like the Clean Industrial Deal, yes, but if that is not complemented and going together with, for example, the action plan on affordable energy, that, and again, like there is a good analysis, but what people think, what people want, I guess, at least what I want, is that if I need to make an effort and if I need to pay a bill that goes in a certain direction, I would like also others to share those costs. And most importantly, I would say that is still a little bit missing. I would like polluters to pay more.
Thank you very much for these concrete solutions. Now off to Bartek. I would like to ask you a seemingly simple question, but a really big one. So where does Europe stand in the global race for competitiveness?
Thank you for the invitation. And it's a hot chair, actually, I'm feeling, because I represent Polish business, basically. I said this in wide terms. I'm a CEO of Business Science Poland, which is Brussels-based business federation representing Polish companies from energy intensive through transport and up to digital. So we have a fairly good overview of the impacts on competitiveness indeed. And there is, of course, a lot of issues that I would like to raise, but I will try to keep myself restrained. Where do we stand? I think that many great minds have spoken about this for the last year. So, I mean, Draghi led Aninisto. We had Antwerp Declaration that stated industries actually points on how to make industry and business competitive in Europe. So I will not repeat that, but I will mention two things that I think are super important. One thing is the change of mindset. We are not in the mindset of entrepreneurial risk-taking, and we have to do this because this is the most important thing, because this sets ambition, sets attitude to maybe abolishing dogmas, how to do things, how to act, and it applies to everyone, from business people to policymakers. We just have to be more open to various solutions, how to avoid actually the dilemma and choice between burning up, between getting poorer, between switching off our power, and of course now there's an element of defense, which is of course super important as well, because competitive Europe is not only about the prosperity, social welfare, but obviously it's about the ability to defend ourselves. So this change of mindset, I mean, I think we'll return during this discussion a few times. At least I have some examples of how important it is. But the second, of course, single most important aspect is something that we have discussed, and the Minister mentioned this to a large extent. It's actually energy cost, because it affects everyone from heavy industry, all businesses, data centers, households. And actually data centers is something that we should mention here because we have to be aware that in a couple of years, the consumption of energy by data centers will be comparable to the industrial one, like 165 terawatts. So this is another player on the market. So if we are to speak in concrete terms, the message from business is simple. We need double as much energy as we have today at half of price. If this is possible to deliver, we are very keen on, seeing this, because, of course, this is one of the main components of the Clean Industrial Deal, this Affordable Energy Action Plan that has been released a few weeks ago. But to be fair, and I understand we are here to speak frankly, we don't see anything there that would get us closer to delivering to this objective. Of course, there are some long-term solutions like getting energy union a bit more integrated, some promises to look at the gas market, which of course is driving the prices of energy because of the merit order system. I think the most promising elements of this is the potential for lowering tariffs and taxes, but of course we know this is difficult also for member states because it impacts the fiscal part of discussion. So, but in short, we don't see any revolution actually in this piece of paper, and so we need something more ambitious, in other words. And I think, I mean, we see the new mindset, which has been mentioned here, which is very good. But this mindset has to translate in concrete positive actions. And I would mention two aspects where, in fact, we see a change of paradigm, I'd say. One is, of course, this revolt against regulation, as dubbed by the economist, Prime Minister Tusk, and so the simplification process is really important, really, because we've overload entrepreneurs and businesses with regulations. Simply, we just hold back all this productivity and the conditions to run business here. And of course, there is an argument that regulations, project our values and so on. Yes, but regulations themselves will not make a world a better place, obviously. Especially not 20,000 pages as adopted in the last political cycle, without looking at the real impact, checking the operation of those regulations in the real economy. And secondly, of course, if regulations are to be effective in projecting our values, there has to be economic power behind them, both on our own continent, but also outside, because we are not in a vacuum. So if we want to have a leadership through our ideas, regulations, and so on, there has to be economic power behind this. And currently, we are not in a good position, as I think we all are aware. The second element in which I see certain shift in thinking is, again, looking at the fact that we are not in isolation. I mean, not only Poland, of course, the whole Europe. And there is some less dogmatic approach to protecting the European value chains, starting with non-pricing criteria for wind, for hydrogen, for now, clean tech. Of course, it's still on paper, and we'll see how this will work out. But there is a change of mindset there, and we see some, bold even ideas in trade policy. So this is also optimistic. Of course, we cannot go too far in there because still Europe is a net exporter. So basically, it's not in our interest to destabilize the world trade. It's not in no one's interest, obviously, but some don't notice that or haven't learned this yet. But that's a good direction, I think. But on what the mindset that is evolving as we speak, even today in Brussels, we hear some news about that. It's that the main burden for business industry still comes from the previous political cycle, which is Fit for 55. It's ETS2, it's CBAM, which is far from perfect. It's various regulatory targets for industry, like hydrogen target, which is impossible to meet in current conditions. And we see some openness for political discussion here, but it's very slow, but there's nothing on the table that addresses that. So I'll stop here.
Maybe not yet, because there is a lot of pessimism in what you are saying, unlike in what Minister Zielińska was telling us. So I would like to ask you the question: what would you like to hear from Minister Zielińska and from Ursula von der Leyen to keep your mood higher and better?
Words are not enough, but perhaps this. I mean, no, there is, of course, optimism, because I truly believe in Polish entrepreneurship, and especially living in 20 years abroad, and I can compare really that spirit, and still we are many reasons to be proud of. Especially on the clean tech side, I mean, there is a publication of some data from the European Patent Office, where it seems that we are quite strong in clean tech, innovations. But I have something with me. No, it's not that. Exactly. This is a photovoltaic panel, actually, invented in Poland, which is China-free, because it doesn't need any critical materials from anywhere. It's just chemical synthesis which is behind this. if you see this lightning, that means it's working even if this amount of light. So this was invented more or less 10 years ago in Poland. And until today, we were able only to put in a small factory in the center of Wrocław to produce for a very local small scale, which is a revolutionary idea, actually. A couple of years ago, China put 2 billion dollars or whatever, in there, and now they are producing this on the industrial scale. So, I mean, we have ideas, but something is not working well if we're not able to, transform those ideas into concrete solutions. And this is about financing. I mean, you are right, there's plenty of money out there, but what matters, how it is being spent, how it is being put on the market, how accessible it is, and so on. I mean, we know this comparison between IRA system, which IRA and Europe actually, when we compare those two to sacks of money, I mean, European is probably bigger, but the American one is just more easy to access. And again, this is an evidence, a testament to that something is going wrong here. So, Minister, please help to fix this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for the concrete questions and proposals. So now to Niels. Looking at the coming Danish EU Council presidency, I would like to ask you what energy and environmental priorities do you expect to be at the top of the presidency agenda?
First of all, as I should, I'm raised right, so thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very pleased to be here representing Denmark, and I have to say that before I answer the question, if there's any skepticism in which direction we're moving, I would invite you to look at some statements from Poland from around the time I arrived 3.5 years ago. You would not be able to recognize the energy conversation back then that you see now. So even if it feels like things are not moving fast, it actually is. Going back and seeing sort of the skepticism on climate change in general, the skepticism towards whether we were able to find the money in Poland and beyond, that's off the table now. We have other concerns, certainly, but the core idea that the State Secretary is pointing at is that the money is there and the technology is there. We don't need anything new to get to where we need to be going. So I'll just emphasize that to sort of hopefully get rid of some of the pessimism that might be present. Now, of course, I will leave it to the Prime Minister to say exactly what the priorities for the Danish presidency in the latter half of the year are. But at the same time, I've been clear to sort of give a little bit of an indication on the energy and the climate side, what we are aiming at. Most of this will not be a huge surprise to many of you in the room. Coming from a country that has very ambitious climate targets, we are aiming for 70% reduction by 2030, and we're on track. So just to put things into perspective, that's where we're standing, and this is probably also why, or this is definitely also why the points I'm about to make look extremely ambitious, perhaps from other points of view. So the first thing that I will emphasize is Ukraine. Now that sticks out a little bit when it comes to climate and energy in general, but winter preparedness in Ukraine is going to be at the top of the list for Danish priorities on the energy area. We've already shown, and Poland in particular has already shown how much of a difference we can make with the infrastructure we have today, and how life-saving European efforts on that matter are. So this will be an area of focus, both in making sure the hardware is transferred and also making sure that the energy transfer that is ongoing right now is scaled up to the degree possible with the existing infrastructure. Other than that, on energy and climate, we will be focusing, of course, on the European climate law, in particular the NDC from the EU. This will be very necessary for the COP in Brazil, but it's also necessary to underline this link between sustainability and security. That right now, and we recognize the focus of the Polish presidency, and we are here to strengthen a lot of the things that have been brought forward on energy security, on security in general. But we also need to emphasize that there are costs to our present, the business as usual, that can only be mitigated if, to some degree, global actors are pointing in the same direction. And the EU has, at times at a slower pace, at times at a higher pace, really been the leader of the climate agenda globally. We have set aggressive targets. We have pushed for climate and green agenda to be brought up on global fora, making sure that the COP has been a success to the degree that it has been a success. And this is one of the things that Denmark wants to emphasize, is that we need to keep it up. Whether we can reach the very most ambitious targets that we are hoping for right now is somewhat beside the point. What we need is to agree on some targets. We need to have some clarity in what the rest of the world can expect from Europe, so that at least we are proving ourselves to be a stable point in a very chaotic environment when it comes to climate. This is beyond necessary. Now, the second thing is that Denmark will still be focusing on, we were hoping, of course, for the Commission to have put forward on these 90-degree reduction targets by 2040. We are still confident that they will come. Either way, this will be an emphasis of the Danish presidency to maintain a focus on this 90% reduction that we know elements here in Poland and elsewhere are also thankfully focused on still. Not because we need a big number, not because we want a big target that was mentioned earlier, healthy skepticism towards big targets without something behind it, but simply because it's fully achievable with the existing technology and we need it to maintain competitiveness. And I don't mean to always link climate and energy with competitiveness, but if you look at the Danish economy over the last 30, 40 years, the way we have not been impacted as heavily as other countries by what happened, by the price shocks that we've seen due to almost exclusively Russia's acts, both in the start of the 2010s and also, of course, after the invasion, is by going green as fast as possible. And I'll make one quick example, which is on heating. Of course, electricity, as Bartek already pointed out, because of marginal pricing, we are still tied to fossil fuel prices, even though our grid is green. So when there is gas in the mix, even if we are green, that is still the price setter. So we end up paying a premium for electricity, which is another issue I'll get back to that we need to look at very significantly. But when you take that out of the equation, you can see what going green does for the individual consumer's wallet and what it does for our competitiveness. Because in Denmark, the citizens that were connected to our district heating systems, in particular the district heating systems that had that were quite far along in the green transformation, that were efficient, that had low supply temperature, that had storage, that had solar thermal or excess heat available to them, their prices did not budge through the whole energy crisis. 10% increase, some even lowered the prices a little bit during that time. Whereas, of course, to no surprise here, every customer that was linked to a system that used gas or, God forbid, had gas themselves, their prices shot up 2 or 3 times in a very short amount of time. And I'm not saying that to sort of, to be glib. I'm just saying that was a point at which Danish consumers and Danish voters saw the price right in front of them of business as usual, of not going green. And that, I think, is the missing element that a lot of countries in Europe have had an issue, that the right or the populists have been allowed to capitalize or fully conquer the sort of the green agenda by saying this is an added cost, this is something to be scared of, when in reality, it's the fully opposite, fully opposite, right? That where we have gone the most green the fastest has been the cheapest and most competitive, where we have not seen enough move in that direction, where there's been skepticism or where permitting has gotten in the way, that's where we've ended up bleeding money. So that was just to defend the 90% target by 2030 that Denmark will be supporting in its presidency. Of course, we will also focus a lot on phasing out the remainders of Russian energy in the European grid. It's, Poland has been the leader on this topic, so I don't need to convince anyone in this room, but it is both shameful and costly that we are still paying Russian entities for energy. That will be a core area that we focus on. Gas storage regulation, naturally also a focus for us. And then beyond the sort of Repower Europe focus, and of course we're looking forward to the report coming in the latter half of the year, we will also be focusing quite a bit on energy infrastructure at its core. Not huge projects, not the islands in the North Sea or in the Baltic to do anything particularly fancy, but just emphasizing the need for a lot more interconnectivity between our countries. A lot more interconnectivity across the Baltic, over land, as well as sea. the Danish experience has been that every time we build an interconnector, whether with the Netherlands, with the UK, with the Swedes, with the Norwegians, with Germany, our prices and their prices go down. It creates flexibility in the market, it allows for better use of our variable renewable resources, and it ends up being a win-win. And when it is a win-win, we should do more of it. This sounds completely obvious, but of course it costs a lot of money up front. And if you are a transmission service operator, you cannot just grab into a big bag of money and to throw it at an infrastructure project, even if you know it's a good idea, because you can't defend that to your customers. You have to basically, since it's a 20 to 30 year project, you need to find the money somewhere. And the EU has some facilities that already support this, but we need to put more money into those facilities. In particular, for example, the Connecting Europe facility on energy, that needs to be funded to a much, much higher degree. It needs to be easier to access that money. And as we see from an infrastructure project like the Baltic Pipe, in Denmark there was a lot of skepticism in the beginning, the middle, and the end of that project, because it's a gas project. That we are and were quite green. There was a lot of questions about, well, why are we making infrastructure that we ideally would like to not see used? But of course, you know, it's opened up. The Baltic Pipe opened 6 months after the Russians invaded Ukraine, and it became quite apparent, even to the most skeptical voices in Denmark, that this traditional energy infrastructure is a way to make sure that we are building resiliency, that we are ensuring our independence from actors that we cannot trust. If we had had a lot more Baltic Pipe and a lot less Nord Stream, we would not be in the same issue we have, and Russia would have potentially run out of money to run their wars by now. So really, that is a very strong argument Denmark feels for lowering the barriers between countries on the energy market. We understand why they are there, the barriers, to protect some vested interests in the fossil fuel industry. Of course, I won't shy away from saying that, but also the way our transmission systems, the way our energy markets are set up right now, it is a shock to the system if a lot of renewables could be added, for example, from Denmark. It is not immediately a net benefit for a German TSO to open the floodgates to Danish offshore, because it would overwhelm a lot of their generating partners that they need for baseload and so on and so forth. But there are plenty of market mechanisms, plenty of transmission mechanisms, and plenty of options for example, hydrogen and other things that can both mitigate it and make sure that the investments that we do make are worth the price, even when we are paying a premium right now for energy infrastructure. So it's infrastructure, it's connectivity between countries, it's making sure that people understand that the link between competitiveness and green, those will be the core areas of focus for the presidency.
So the motto of the Polish presidency is... The motto for the Polish presidency is Security Europe. So now, how would you encapsulate the priorities of the Danish one?
That'll be for the Prime Minister. I don't put titles on anything. Politicians absolutely love to do that. I won't take it away from them. But it's very clear that, I mean, we will be focusing, of course, on security. It'll be the core of a lot of what we're doing. But when I'm talking about the energy agenda, it'll be, you know, going back to basics, basically.
Thank you so much. Minister, you emphasize how hard it is to turn national climate goals into real action within the complex the complex system of the European Union. So how to turn words into deeds here? What are the major obstacles that Poland currently has to face here? And how does your ministry plan to overcome these challenges?
Thank you. I would love for Niels to speak a bit longer, so I'll but I guess you have to. I have to bring tools to the table, also for our business to believe that we actually are moving the needle and not just talking about this. I got the message, right? You want to see the change and not just hear, and so. Right. This month we finally deregulated windmills, onshore wind. It's quite a serious deregulation project for all those who want deregulation. We already have it on the table. It's just went into the parliament. It's the windmills, the cheapest source of energy worldwide, for those who have ETS and for those who don't have or have a lower ETS, China also has their carbon tax, just to remind those who may have forgotten it. It's just at a cheaper price than Europe, okay. But even in China, windmills onshore is a few times cheaper than gas and coal, between 7 to 10, based on IRENA reports. So that project is in Parliament, and we're just literally waiting for Parliament to hopefully adopt it very swiftly, without waiting for presidential elections, I hope. I hope no one will want to keep it in a smiling freezer, as they call it, for any longer than, because we really see the impact of every gigawatt of the wind energy in our analysis, in the planning, what it makes to our energy prices. The more of it we have in a grid, that as long as the grid can absorb it, that's also a super important element, the cheaper the prices. The prices are falling then. So now the grid. Grid is a huge bottleneck in Poland, and it's not prepared to absorb renewables that we need for lower prices. And so this Monday, another project on grid accessibility has gone into outside world for consultations and for government to proceed and adopt, and it hopefully will go into Parliament very soon. So it's a project that unlocks grid for those who are currently queuing in a waiting times, on a waiting list, and don't really see the process. The process is totally not transparent. There's people blocking grid in huge amounts for a long period of time, and others just get rejections, and the rejections are sky high, and we can't have this. So this project is bringing order into this situation, not allowing big players to block grid for long if they're not using it, or if they're not fulfilling their obligations or their commitments that we have written into the milestones. So this project is putting an end to it. It will be transparent, it will be digital, you will see who's queuing, you will see where your motion for grid attachment is currently at, and why your waiting time and how long your waiting time will be. So that's a really super important project. Then other changes that have come together with the onshore wind, that's also quite important regulation. There is support for biomethane and biogas. Super important, because biomethane will be our green gas, and it will replace renewable gas, hopefully soon. So we will need it to balance out wind and solar, and this is already in the regulation, support system for better business environment to develop biomethane. So that's already in the project, that's already out there together with the wind regulation. We have also, we're working on hydrogen, the hydrogen strategy, and first hydrogen legislation has already been adopted by the Parliament last year, just to create a framework for green hydrogen development. And I know that there is a big discussion about hydrogen targets being unrealistic. But if I can say something to that point, if we put all the energy that we are putting currently and have been putting for the past 8, 10, maybe more years, to kind of worry about the targets, rather than if we invest all this energy into actually looking for ways to produce this, to support the production of the green hydrogen at the early stages when it's still, developing a developing technology, therefore the prices are naturally higher at the beginning. If we put all these efforts into creating the framework to help lower the prices faster, I think that's the way forward, rather than putting all the efforts into worrying about the target and the number. Because we will need green hydrogen to move, to make the heavy industry competitive. Because currently the heavy industry is going right down in Europe because it's losing against China. And China, we just had latest reports on how much renewables has China installed in the last year. 2/3 of the global renewable capacity was installed in China. Therefore, China will soon have huge amounts of green hydrogen and will have green steel and will be selling us its green steel because we will be behind, because we talk and worry about those numbers rather than being as consequent as China is in actually going into sector after sector of new industries and the green industries and taking them over by dumping prices, using all sorts of tactics, but being very consequent in how they're doing it. So the solar panels are already gone to China. Now electromobility is already moving to China, and we cannot let it happen. So if we just keep arguing about the numbers rather than keep focusing on how we build market-driven tools to support new technology to develop, and I'm taking your challenge fully, how can we let China take over our innovation rather than investing in it here? Really, I think this is a real issue we have here. And I think one of the greatest obstacles we have is knowledge and our minds. It's not technology and not the finance. How do we overcome this? I will go everywhere, and I'm not going just to Brussels whilst we have presidency. I'm going a lot into the most distant parts of Poland. I'm going to Podkarpacie, so southeast of Poland, next week to share with local governments, look, here is all the money for investment. You can do this and this and this with this. Let's do it quickly before the money ends and the financial term is up, so we can invest rather than just spend because it needs to be spent quickly. We need to invest for exactly those future generation technologies. Otherwise, we will be buying everything from China in 10 years' time, and we really don't want that.
Thank you so much. So we need investment and consequence. And Niels wanted to jump in.
Yeah, I just wanted to support what you're saying in that both biomethane and the hydrogen aspect, because of course, I think, rather, it is clear that we will need molecules in the future. I mean, the process is described to make green steel, and a number of other high energy intensive industries will require something to set fire to something, at least for the time being with the technology that exists. And Denmark has, for a long time, been focusing a lot on biogas, but specifically biomethane. And for those not familiar with the difference, biogas can be just, for example, if you have a pig farm, which we happen to have a lot of in Denmark, a pig farm, you can harvest the gas that comes off of that production process, and you can essentially, capture it and use it as gas. But it is a very low energy intensity in that product. What you need to do is upgrade it. I'm not sure what it's. Definitely don't know the Polish word. Not sure the English word. But we need to add a little bit of extra chemistry in order to have it reach the level of the methane that we have in our grids. But once you've done that, it is chemically completely identical to natural gas. And we are now at the stage in Denmark where about 40% of the consumed gas in Denmark is biomethane. And we are aiming for 100% of it to be biomethane by the end of 2040, which of course can only happen if we're reducing the amount of gas we're consuming at the same time as we're increasing the production of biomethane. And what we can see in Poland is that there are a lot of projects. There are actually a lot of biogas plants, but they have been supported in a way to have them be have enough of a to not necessarily have plans to convert or to connect to the national grid exactly, or to improve this gas. And that is a sort of classic European problem, right? Exactly like you were saying earlier, Bartek. It's not about whether there are ideas, it's about whether are we managing to scale them? Are we managing to make them available where we need them to? It's a market failure, not an ingenuity failure, not a technology failure. And this is really what we have come up against when we are trying to export this gas, for example, towards our German neighbors, is that there have been some regulations, some efforts to keep biogas out of their national system because they haven't tested it sufficiently. But it being completely chemically identical, the Danish position is we don't necessarily need additional tests. And either way, you have an origin or a certificate of its exact origin, so you know where everything is coming from. You can go inspect any of the plants in Denmark. As you say, transparency is really a key issue. And then transparency, again, is also an issue with grid. I'm so glad you mentioned it, because in Denmark, we also have tons of issue with the grid. Both when it comes to the distribution net, but in particular with the transmission net. This amount of decentralized variable renewable resources is a surprise to no one, but it is a challenge to everyone. Right? We are all seeing the trends. We all see how much money is actually available to make these investments. But we do have spoilers, like we have in Poland as well. You know, projects that say, "Oh, we're going to build this by this time," but then they kind of sit on their laurels, wait for the price of money to go up or down a little bit, and then the permits default and end up not being used. That is an issue. So transparency solves that to a degree. In A, shaming those companies that do it, it B, like pushing them to make sure that they invest in the projects that they've approved. But it also emphasizes what does the project look like inside the mechanism of state, which is something we in Denmark have a lot of experience with, and which creates trust in consumers, which is the final thing I'll just mention here, is that trust is really one of the things that's missing from the discussion about green or cost or competitiveness. A lot of the campaigns that I saw when I arrived here saying that ETS is what's making your prices higher, those were only possible because A, people in general didn't trust their government, they didn't trust what it said on their energy bills, and they wasn't explained to them what does each individual point on your energy bill look like. So when things go up, they just say, well, we're using the same amount, why is it more expensive to us? It's not our fault that all these things are happening that's making the cost higher, and it's not pleasant. But when we in Denmark carry out tests and consumer inclusion programs, we can see that while people still don't like prices going up, they definitely don't. We don't in Denmark either. When you are explaining to them why they're going up, over what time they will be going up, and when they will go down again, that's when you get people on your side. So this transparency is a huge part of what needs to happen across Europe, both to sort of showcase that is not magic that makes your prices go up, it's Russia. And it's not magic that will make them go down, it's solar panels and wind turbines.
Thanks. So transparency is also added to our longer and longer wish list. So now up to Chiara, I'd like to ask you, what are the biggest challenges in getting the EU countries to agree on common environmental goals, and how to overcome the challenges in doing that?
Okay, thank you for the question. I think we heard already many challenges, so maybe I will try to focus on
another one.
I maybe try to focus more on what we can do, actually. I think one thing maybe that we didn't mention very clearly when it comes to the challenges here is that for all that to happen, and I think there is agreement that we want to reach our climate neutrality target because it's convenient, is economically convenient, because it's socially just and fair within Europe, outside Europe. So we have all the vision, I guess, I hope, right? And we want that. I think one of the important things that we didn't mention explicitly is that I miss some time to hear that there is a political will to do it as a European Union. So, and it's not only it's a values and is a trust debate, but it's also a very practical thing that we need to tackle all those policies that will be the driver of this alignment, meaning fiscal policies, trade policies, yeah, and so on and so forward. So I think that, for example, this is something that also we saw a lot, as been mentioned, the Antwerp Declaration. We saw a lot of actually progressive businesses throughout the whole consultation toward the Green Industrial Deal, mentioning the need for alignment of national policies when it comes to industry. And I think that is a very healthy debate that we need to support, but we didn't see anymore anything like within the Green Industrial Deal that actually could foster this alignment across member states on industrial policies. I think what the other thing that I guess you expect from me, I represent civil society. The other thing I think we need to overcome to support such a cohesion and such alignment is a social acceptance. And I mean, here I'm not inventing, you know, the hot water. I mean, to boost and support social acceptance of the energy transition, people needs to be involved. And I can make a very concrete example. Across member states, as can Europe, we have this monitoring of the national energy and climate plans. And we do see that, unfortunately, participation of civil society and citizens is very weak when it comes to the setting up and the preparation of these national energy and climate plans. So I think this is a tool that actually is possible, is out there, and we need to support in terms of strengthening the social acceptance to the energy transition. And maybe one last thing is more about the whole thing about now we hear a lot about simplification agenda. I think we are all in favor of simplifying where things are difficult. I think what we need to be very careful is that this simplification agenda doesn't become a deregulation agenda. And I think here also the wording is very important from media and from all of us that we have the luxury of speaking to people. One thing is, I just want to repeat, one thing is simplifying and making sure that social and environmental conditionalities and principles are safeguards, because regulation is there to make sure that social and environmental conditionalities are safeguarded. Another thing is deregulation, and I think here we can't afford for everything that, I mean, the minister and our Danish representative here mentioned very well. I mean, there is no other option for a competitiveness agenda than keeping climate action and economic growth and prosperity together.
Thank you so much. So Bartek will be the last in this session, in this round. So please prepare to the final silver bullet solution round. So Bartek, apart from your ad vocem that you want to mention now, I would like to ask you also, how do you think the Clean Industrial Deal will impact the competitiveness of Poland and Europe, and how to make it impacted positively?
Another $1 billion question. I just wanted to react to something that has been said here. I mean, the innovative thinking in business, but I think it should be also in policy making, is fail fast and adapt fast. If something doesn't work, you have to move on. And actually, renewable hydrogen is one of the areas that we have to move on, because if we see the amount of, a simple thing, I mean, Poland has 1/5 of the whole European hydrogen production that has to be decarbonized. Do we have conditions for this? No, because even the whole electricity, renewable electricity that we have in Europe, in Poland today, is not enough to decarbonize our hydrogen production. With additionality criteria, which are, you know, imposed by different, you know, delegated acts, and all geeks of this know, I'm sure, what I'm talking about. It makes impossible for anyone in Europe, actually. So if we stick to this solution, I mean, we can put, you know, a target on paper, but it won't be fulfilled. So ambition and forward thinking means that also we have to draw conclusions from the policies that basically do not work. And I think that low carbon is simply the answer. I mean, we have to look at other solutions to decarbonize heavy industry, including hydrogen. Otherwise, we'll just import, you know, ready products from abroad. That's one potential solution. Another potential solution is that actually that is being proposed by a Clean Industrial Deal, which I'm not super fan of. I'm basically to create the concept of lead markets. In other words, to push the target lower downstream to other, including consumers, to car producers. So in order to put some targets for other users of, let's say, green steel, green hydrogen, so they will take the burden of actually financing this very expensive, at least for the moment, solution. And the question is whether this will actually bring us social acceptance, because this will, of course, impact the prices, which are already today super high. And so that's why I'm not sure whether this is a good way, because it's just creating another regulator target but pushing down the downstream. And I think that my message, because I'm mindful of time, would be basically, let's take this concept of being ambitious, forward-thinking, and out of dogma, fail fast, adapt fast, also in policy making. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now the silver bullet from Minister Zielińska.
If there's one thing I would all of us want to remember from what I've said today, this morning, is please do remember there is data not from several countries in Europe, one example being Denmark, and it's a great example because it's on a country level. There are analysis in the Polish Ministry of Climate and Environment that shows that there is no either or in terms of ambitious energy transition versus healthy, growing economy and welfare. They strengthen each other. One is necessary to achieve the other in the current, where the world is going, where everyone is going, where China is going. One is strengthening the other. They're necessary, and they are the same, both sides of the same coin, as you beautifully put it at the beginning. Same with climate action, adaptation, and security and safety of our everyday life and our quality of life. One is absolutely necessary for another, and they support one another. If we have climate action and adaptation, we save a huge cost that's needed if we let disaster happen. So safety and security are built on good climate adaptation, climate mitigation measures, and we need them to be safe and secure. So that's one thought that I want to leave here on the table, and said there is plenty of data from real life examples and from our strategy and analysis that is proving that this is true. So please help to spread that word to those who think it's otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Chiara?
I guess my message is this concept of security. I think we just need to make sure and protect that is a concept that is holistic and looking at all the crises that each and every European citizen is living. And maybe one word, because I'm afraid we didn't mention at all the environmental impact of what we are discussing. This I just wanted to highlight is another important element to keep into account, because it will cost us a lot of money, a lot of lives within Europe and outside Europe.
Thank you very much. And for the end, Niels.
Thankfully, you'll have the last word, so it's not my responsibility to make sure the last word is good. But from the Danish perspective, cooperation and coordination will be the key to all of this. The Baltic Sea needs to have what happened in the North Sea happen twice as fast. Interconnected energy systems, huge build-out of offshore, and across all of our countries, we need to become much better at planning together. Not because we all love planning, but because it lowers the cost of the energy transition. If we are each building our separate systems and then later try to link them together, it'll be more expensive and less efficient. If we start out by using the regional planning bodies we already have more effectively, and to also make some commitments to one another that we will put our money where our mouth is, then the transition will become less expensive and we will become much more resilient towards outside pressure.
Thank you so much. And just like this, we made it to the end. It seems no Trump, no drama, just policy, just plans, and so many challenges to overcome together. So thank you so much, and please say goodbye to our panelists with a warm round of applause. Thank you.